We have 5 great panelists today. We've got Chris, Ali, Darshit, Roy, and sorry, hold on, let me bring up my list. Julian joining us today. So I'm going to start with just a quick introduction of our 5 panelists. And let me just give you each a heads up. My 3-year-old just walked in the door, so I'm sorry if we got a little bit of background noise coming in. So I'm going to briefly introduce our 5 panelists, and then I'm going to start with some hot questions that we have. And then after the panelists have answered the questions that our committee have come up with, we're going to give each of you a chance to join in with these panelists in breakout rooms, so you can decide who you'd like to talk to and get some of your questions answered. So let's go ahead and get started. Sorry, my 3-year-old's trying to pop into the screen. So if you see a head pop up, that's her. Her name's Antonia. So our panelists in alphabetical order by last name, we got Christopher Bengs, who's a consultant for Booz Allen Hamilton. Christopher has been with Booz Allen for 12 years, spending a decade in direct consulting with the Navy and the government. And now he manages the START program there. START is the new hire transition program where Booz Allen conducts training, networking events, and allows new hires to get comfortable with the company and understand their roles before transitioning to client-facing consulting. We also have Roy Harris joining us. He's a corporate recruiter with Encore Capital Group and Midland Credit Management. Roy's originally from outside of Boston, and he's been living now in San Diego for about 5 years. He's been a recruiter for about 9 years in an agency setting, and he has recently moved into the corporate recruiting in 2019. Roy wants to let you know that he loves sports, the outdoors, he's a movie buff, and he really enjoys reading a good book. We also have Ali McLeod joining us today. She's a recruiter and program specialist for Commonwealth Financial Network. Ali joined the HR team at Commonwealth in 2018. After she previously worked for the nonprofit and manufacturing industries. In addition to being the primary recruiter for their San Diego office, she supports San Diego employees by creating and implementing employee engagement initiatives, enhancing a highly rewarded and valued company culture, and managing HR programs. We also have Julian Rice here today. He's a talent acquisition partner for Intuit. Julian was born and raised in Southern California. He's worked primarily for Fortune 500 companies across consumer goods sales, financial service marketing, talent development, and recruiting. Julian brings great insight into how talent acquisition teams operate and identify qualified college students and recent graduates. We also have Darshit Thakkar, who is a product manager for ZoomInfo. Darshit helps ZoomInfo build new products in the field of recruiting. Before joining ZoomInfo, Darshit spent about 3 years helping the startup Portfolium to scale and expand their ed tech product offerings, and about another 2 years working for Infrastructure, who acquired Portfolium, focusing on SIS integrations. Prior to becoming a project manager, Darshit spent about 6 years as a software developer, developing telecom and fintech products. Unlike one of our other panelists who moved from Boston here, Darshit recently moved to Boston from San Diego, and he has discovered a new love for skiing and snow tubing. So for our panelists, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of address for our students, because as you're used to the recruiting business and you're out there finding talent like them and bringing them in, and you're going to talk to them today about how you make those choices on which candidates to bring in. It's also important for them to make their choice on what company to work for, and have to start thinking about, well, what is it that they really want to work for? So I thought it would be great if you could just give like a brief elevator pitch. And that elevator pitch would basically just say, what is it that you like most about working at the company that you're currently working at? So for now, we'll stick with the same order, the alphabetical, and we'll start with Chris. So do you want to tackle that elevator pitch, Chris?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. Thanks. Yeah, so I get that question a lot, especially since I've been with the company for over 12 years now. So people are saying, you've been there a while, so it must be something good, right? So I think, in consulting, we focus on services. So you can go to other companies that focus on products, and within the defense realm where we focus as well, there are companies that focus on products. And when you go to a company that focuses on a product, it's sort of that traditional project structure. There's a manager, there are people working on the project, et cetera, which is a little different from a services focused environment where we essentially are the products, right? So I've always enjoyed being in an environment where the company focuses on us as the product instead of a thing, right? And that's kind of nice. That's a nice place to be in. It's a weird concept. If you just say that, like, I'm a product, I don't want to be a product. But it's nice because all the things that the company is focused on improving is around us. So we get lots of training, we get lots of networking opportunities. Networking is very big, very people-focused company. So that's what I really enjoyed about consulting in general, but definitely Booz Allen as like a large consulting company. I think we're up to 28,000 firm-wide, and then 1,300 people locally. So pretty big office here in San Diego as well. So I'll say the people part.
I appreciate you sharing that, Chris. Roy, we're going to come to you next. Your elevator pitch for what you like working most with Encore.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Gregory. Yeah, so I would say my elevator pitch would be mostly that. So what my company kind of specializes in, and I'll get into this more, of course, I'm sure, but like debt purchasing. So we buy large portfolios of debt, restructure them, and then work with that consumer directly. And I think that a lot of people have a misunderstanding that we're like a collections agency, which obviously has a much different connotation, whereas we are really kind of going back to what Chris said, we are really all about people as well. So we really try to help with those financial obligations. And that was one of the things I was really looking for in a company, was working at a company that I kind of believed in from even just like an ethical standpoint. I would also say, just kind of in general, some of the things that are just nice about my company is like an excellent kind of work-life balance. Even during COVID, I found the transition from being in an office setting to working remotely, which we were able to do pretty much like that. I still don't know how our company was able to manage a 97% workforce during this process, but we did. And the work-life balance has always been one of my favorite things about the company. And the last thing I would say is that we're definitely a culture that believes in advancement within the organization. One of my metrics as a corporate recruiter is literally having to talk to every single internal employee that, let's say, applies for a position that's above them. I have to have a real conversation with them about how they could fit. It's something that we really encourage. And I think that's something that really speaks to our culture, is we really encourage employees advancing within the company. So those, I would say those are the keys for me.
I appreciate that, Roy. Allie, I'm going to come to you next. Your elevator pitch for what you like at Commonwealth.
Yeah, thanks, Gregory. I'm going to kind of bounce off Roy here because mine's pretty similar, just in terms of professional development and learning opportunities. I find that when a lot of students leave school, they're kind of met with this, oh, wait, what am I going to learn now? And definitely at Commonwealth, I feel like it's a good transition because there's still plenty of learn. The number one thing that I always value about Commonwealth is information sharing. You know, for being a financial services company, I think there's this notion that, you know, you have to keep things private, or your goals private, your financials private, or really like, you know, our corporate plan, or really anything about Commonwealth. And that's just not the case with us. We try to just be as transparent as, you know, we possibly can in all areas. And really what this turns into is new employees being exposed to information early so that they can make an impact early. And that is something that I've always valued about Commonwealth.
All right, thank you very much for that, Allie. Next, I'm going to come to you, Julian. Julian, what is it about Intuit that you love the most?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Gregory. You know what, Intuit is, their mission, or our mission, is to really power prosperity. And so we're a 10,000 employee company globally. And, you know, I think everyone could identify with the state of the small business community, right, through the pandemic and the hardships that they've been going through. It's been really cool to see how Intuit's really gotten behind supporting our small business owners by, for example, shifting the sales workforce for a full week to helping small business owners fill out PPP, like for the CARES Act, to try to source funds for their business and get through it. And so it's just really cool to see how much we're involved in the community. So that's one of the things that I really feel really proud about working at Intuit.
Great, I appreciate that, Julian. Darshit, how about you? What is great about working at ZoomInfo?
Great. Hey everyone. So I'm not sure whether everyone is familiar with ZoomInfo. So just to give you a quick background, ZoomInfo deals with providing firms with marketing and sales data. So if you were to reach out to any prospect, we provide you the relevant data so that you have enough knowledge when you reach out to that prospect. So it's all about having the proprietary database at ZoomInfo. As for what I like about ZoomInfo, it's the culture of innovation and new product development. And that was one of the reasons that I was drawn towards ZoomInfo, because I recently moved to ZoomInfo about 3 months ago. The culture, as I would describe, is build fast, deliver fast, fail fast, and then improve fast. So it's like a fast moving culture where you focus on new product development, getting things out to the market, to the consumers to use, understand the value out of it. And that's what ZoomInfo has been continuing to do over the last few years. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, ZoomInfo treats consumers and employees as equal. So they would focus equally on the consumer's aspect or the customer's aspect, and also on the employee aspect. So it would, going off the other panelist, it's much more focused on the work-life balance as well. And that has also attracted me to ZoomInfo. So those two things are really valuable for me, and I'm grateful to ZoomInfo for that.
Appreciate that very much, Darshit, and thank you all panelists for sharing a little bit about your companies. I think a good place to start would be addressing the pandemic. We know that almost every single industry has been affected by the pandemic. Some industries have actually had a boom from the pandemic, and other industries are struggling. But we do know that it changes the job market a lot. And so I wanted to come to each of our panelists and ask them, what are you observing as far as industry trends, industry changes, and how can our students best start to prepare themselves right now to meet those needs according to those trends? So Chris, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm sure all of us will tell you that we've had our challenges, we've had our successes. We're always looking for the silver lining in all this process. And it was hard for us in the beginning. Just because of the uncertainty, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. Majority of our work is based on contracts with the government. So the government's been very good, quite frankly, to help us adjust to this environment where a lot of us have to work from our houses instead of typically where we'd be on site with the clients. So we've been able to adjust pretty well. I think the company in the beginning was sort of, oh man, okay, let's stop hiring for a little bit. So we did quite a bit in the first few months, and we reserved some administrative funds because of the uncertainty. And then a few months later, we realized, you know what, the government's working with this. I think we're going to get through this. And now we're back up to hiring like we usually would in any normal year. So hopefully that's the case for a lot of other people. I know that's not always the case for a lot of companies that have gone through this. And it's really just industry by industry, kind of checking it out, I think, and looking at how it's really impacted each of these businesses and how it's changed them. I think the silver lining for us is that realizing that we don't necessarily have to be every day with our client, and we're still going to be effective no matter what our location is, and helping our clients get used to that as well, because we're very much used to a model pre-pandemic where we were sitting with our clients side by side day-to-day basis. So eventually we will go back to more of that model where we're on site a lot, but I imagine over time it's building in more trust and flexibility that we can do our job from other locations as well.
Great, very helpful insights. Roy, same question to you, trends that you're seeing and advice to our students.
Yeah, well, I would say that it's very similar to what Chris said for our company as well, in that, I would say starting in whatever that date was in March 2020, that fateful date when everything kind of shut down, the first several months were very, very slow, and it was very difficult finding work. There were a lot of positions that just froze or just kind of shut down. We are totally kind of back to normal now as it relates to the positions that we have open since that time. Obviously, everybody has had to get used to starting from home, starting remotely. So that's just something that we've kind of shared with everybody, is that everybody is getting used to that. So like if you get an offer, we're like shipping laptops out and everything like that. And then orientation is all, of course, done remotely too. And I would say that as a company, being really dynamic and very kind of face-to-face and really wanting to get back to the office, it's been a challenge, but I do feel that we've handled it really well and are kind of getting used to it. And we really, as a company itself, we're one of those people, Gregory, that you mentioned is actually doing really well right now during the pandemic. And I think part of it has to do with the industry that we're in, debt, which is an industry that will never go away. But yeah, I would say as far as learning to get used to certain things, I think honestly, in a funny way, that COVID has allowed students to sort of already get used to working from home because they've been taking classes virtually. So I don't think that the transition is going to be that big of a difference. That's my expectation, but that's kind of how I feel about it. But I think our company did a pretty strong job being able to make that transition during the pandemic.
Thank you, Roy. Ali, I'm interested in your perspective on this. What might you add? You're still muted, Ali, if you want to unmute yourself.
Oh man, I was the first one to do that, and we've made it 19 minutes out of this call. I'd say that's pretty successful. I said I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction with this question, because there is something I've noticed that I think would be great for all of you to get maybe a little bit of a heads up on, and that is there's a new skill that we're looking for now, and that is Zoom etiquette. All our interviews are online, right? Since March. We stopped hiring, just like Chris and Roy, we stopped hiring for about 3 days, I think. And then basically we realized, well, we need to keep hiring. We're not one of those companies that can slow down right now. So we have held over 1,000 virtual interviews in the last year. In those 1,000 interviews and the ones I have attended, I have seen some behaviors that would never happen in in-person interviews. Candidates being late, candidates interrupting the interviewers, candidates that are distracted with other things going on, candidates wearing tank tops. I've seen it all. I would just keep in mind a Zoom interview or a Teams interview or whatever platform it is on follows the same interview rules as a traditional interview. And above that too, make sure that you're being polite, and making someone finish. Obviously, some of those social cues are lost on Zoom. So really just making sure that you are not interrupting someone and treating the interviewer with respect. So that's my biggest piece of advice as it relates to kind of how interviewing has changed in COVID world.
Thanks, Ali, and right on point to how this presentation started with my 3-year-old trying to interrupt me with the introduction.
Yeah. Then I was on mute, so these are 2 great examples.
Julian, what kind of insights can you share?
Yeah, excuse me, I'm still chuckling about Ali. I'm sure we could all share some good Zoom stories. So for Intuit, and I don't think I really got into it earlier, but we have TurboTax, right? QuickBooks is another major product offering. And then we recently acquired Credit Karma. And many of you on this call might even use Mint or are some form of customer of Intuit. And so we really feel that from an omni-channel commerce perspective, the world's kind of leapt forward 5 years, right? And so our business has been pretty sound considering the state of affairs. Unfortunately, lots of small business owners and mid-market customers are struggling. But from a student standpoint, it's been great, right? Last year, I know Roy mentioned that dreadful day, March 12th, we had to pivot and make a decision if we were going to go or no go with respect to our internships and our new college grad programs. And again, Intuit's very people focused. always honors its commitments. We actually went forward when a lot of companies were saying, hey, no internship anymore, right? Or no new college grad opportunity. So that's something to be proud of. One thing I would just mention for students now, considering Zoom etiquette, et cetera, is just, start early when it comes to relationship building with your employer of choice, and then really try to get creative. Being that you have this platform, people are still virtual. Some people are willing to talk on Zoom, right? Like, so just try to distinguish yourself. I think when you're reaching out to recruiters, recruiters get hundreds of reach outs on LinkedIn, emails. I'm sure someone on this call's email box is overloaded. But when you take time to really be intentional, and really try to just be authentic and ask for what you're looking for in your email or whatever medium that you're reaching out, right? Just a blind LinkedIn request without any who am I, why am, have a purpose. State it really quickly. This is the purpose of this email, right? Or this is the purpose of me reaching out to you. I think that's going to get you more traction, and then give it some time, right? People are busy. Tomorrow, you're not going to, don't expect a response in 24 hours, right? Give everyone some time to get back to you. And I think that'll help distinguish you as well.
Thanks, Julian. I feel like you were sitting in on some of my networking conversations. So I appreciate that. Darshit, I'm going to come over to you. And as a product manager, maybe you have actually a little bit different perspective on things. What can you share?
Right. So I would definitely not speak from a recruitment perspective or talent acquisition perspective, but please feel free to correct me if what I'm saying is not the right trend or not the right thing to say. So I would speak about two things. So I used to work for Instructure, and Instructure is the company that that still makes a Canvas learning management system. You guys will be familiar with Blackboard, since San Diego State at least uses Blackboard, but I was working for Canvas, and in education was one of the fields that did not take too much of a hit during pandemic because everything was going online, classes had to be online, and that was the field that we needed more investment on. So luckily for me and for the company, we did not have any, or maybe not too many layoffs related to that. And once pandemic was over, we again picked up on the same pace as we were during pandemic. So not too much of change there. But one of the things that I noticed when I started interviewing for different companies when I moved from Instructure, as a student, I always used to go to career fairs, and that's where you have the physical contact with the recruiter, you speak and stuff like that. Now the industry, at least in terms of ZoomInfo and Instructure, it's moved towards automation and AI. So your resume parsing has gotten much more aggressive in terms of what your skills are and in terms of what the job description requires. So make sure, like this is one of the advice that I tell every student, or at least anybody asking for one, is make sure your skills are aligned with the job description, because anytime when you apply, if you don't talk to the recruiter directly, you apply through a job description, through a job application form, it would go through an ATS, which is an applicant tracking system that will scan your resume and extract the important details out of it. So make sure those skills and the job description is well aligned in order to get the recruiter's eyes on it. And I'm sure all the recruiters on the call, they have tons and tons of resumes in their inbox every single day, and they wouldn't get time to go through all of them. So in order to stand out, make sure it's well aligned to the job description. So those are the two important things that I've noticed so far.
Thanks, Darshit. And when I'm talking with our grad students, I'm usually using the term relevancy, where you're using aligned. Make sure that what you're saying and showing is very relevant to what you're applying for. So great advice, Darshit. I want to open up this next question to anybody on the panel that wants to answer this. It's the same question basically, but it's for our international students. They face some additional challenges. It's already a tough competition. Some of them are seeking sponsorship. Any advice particularly suited to international students that you want to share?
I can go.
Okay.
Since I went through the process. So yeah, so obviously sponsorship is always a challenge. Especially during pandemic, nobody wanted to go through the turbulences of the immigration system and the immigration processes changes that the government was trying to implement. But what I've found, like even the companies that have not sponsored, and again, I don't speak for any of the panelists, but this is just my observation. most of the companies, they wouldn't sponsor you for either H-1Bs or green cards. But if you get a chance to work for them, let's say OPT and STEM OPT, they don't require sponsorship. It's up to the students to just apply for OPT. And if you have a STEM degree, you apply for extension. So that technically gives you 3 years of work authorization. During that 3-year period, if the company finds you super useful and you think that you are a valuable asset to the company, they would not mind going through the process of understanding what H-1B is and what's the value for bringing in a candidate on H-1B. So that's my 2 cents is, do not stop yourself from applying for the companies that do not sponsor or have not sponsored in the past. You never know, you might be an exceptional candidate and the company might be willing to go further down the line to get you a sponsorship.
Great advice, Darshit. And that's kind of what I've seen too. When you're just a candidate competing against everybody else and an international student, you're at a disadvantage. But if you can signal yourself out, show your value and your worth, that changes the calculus about how companies look at you and that decision on whether or not to sponsor. Do any of our panelists have a similar experience? Have you seen international students that have just been exceptional, stand out, and have gone against the grain on the company's decision to sponsor or not?
I can speak a little bit to that. And so it's actually kind of funny timing in that our company actually made a business decision in 2020 because of not really COVID, but more the political climate, which Darshit spoke a little bit to, that they decided that it was a little too risky for them to sponsor anybody because we used to have certain positions where we would allow for sponsorship. And quite frankly, those positions, we kind of expected it, because usually the top candidates were international students. For example, business or data analysts, specifically business analysts. We got mostly international students, but we had made this business decision to not allow for sponsorship until we learned a little bit more about what the future held from a political point of view. Except there was this one candidate who was a UCLA grad student who had actually relocated back to his hometown in India, who was just a fantastic candidate, and we ended up making an exception for the kid. And he's now working for us in our India location because he's close to the office. But then when he finishes school, he'll come and live in San Diego and work for us there. But it was a very unusual situation that required a lot of workaround for everything from the hours worked to how is he going to get paid? Is it going to be in dollars or rupees? Things like that. Very, very strange kind of things that I had to work around, but it was definitely educational for me.
Great, thanks for that, Roy. For our international students that are here, you'll have an opportunity in our breakouts to kind of address that question a little more in depth if you got some more details than what we covered here. So Allie in her conversation alluded to new skills like being Zoom etiquette or having Zoom etiquette. So I want to ask each of our panelists, what areas of your business are growing faster? What new things are popping up? What new skills should our students be developing now that are going to help them to get hired at your companies? So we'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah, it's a good question. On our side for government services overall, not just San Diego, because San Diego, we focus primarily on the military and the Navy. That's our big business, but we work in pretty much all the government areas across the country, lots of DC work as well. And the big growth area for us is data science. So data, everything. So robotic process automation, Python work, like a lot of the data side is growing very heavy. And then cyber, and cyber is probably the bigger one locally for us in San Diego, above and beyond the data science area. So I'd say if I had to pick a couple things, those are the 2 areas and skills related to those areas. Tool usage, proof of applying these things in an internship, certifications, things like that.
Thanks, Chris. Since Darshit and Roy both recently spoke, I want to come to you, Allie. You also kind of introduced the topic in the first place. What other things has your company started to look for? What parts of your business are growing faster? So maybe it's not a skill set, but maybe this is a job role that's growing pretty fast.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say the main thing with our company that I've noticed and with financial services is that more and more roles are becoming hybrid roles with technology. So for example, we used to might have someone that was just basically someone who opened financial accounts, right? We now have someone that does that part-time and then automates that processing part-time. So he has a hybrid role, right? We're looking for more and more people who are interested in our industry. Genuinely, they want to be in financial services and find that engaging, but also are interested in that futuristic, innovative mindset, right? So I love candidates that I can see both. And I think more and more that's becoming important. More and more hiring managers are looking for that, especially as our teams are implementing new technologies, looking at new technologies. We need people that can keep up.
Thank you very much, Ali. Those are all wonderful pieces of advice. Julian, I'm going to come to you next. And since you had mentioned your products, I actually have product placement for you here on my desk. That was just random. I was doing my taxes. So that's for you.
Right on.
So what new types of job areas or what fast growing job areas are there at Intuit? What types of new skills or fast growing skill sets are you looking for as you're filling roles?
Yeah, I think Ali and Roy, they already hit the sweet spot in terms of that hybrid model, right? For example, within the finance organization, they were looking for a couple of interns, and they didn't want just someone that knew how to do M&A, right? Or just standard pure finance. They wanted that data analytics piece, like that's the distinguisher. And so if you can pick up anything like machine learning, I mean, think about our business is mostly SaaS. And so text analytics, deep learning, natural language processing, AI, any of those areas are really going to set you apart. Even if you're not a purist, like from a technology standpoint, even if you're not going to be a product manager, but learning something like SQL, R, Python, just showing that you have a growth mindset, Tableau, those are going to be key skills. But underline and underscore growth mindset and just, being able to tell a story. So lots of communication is happening over the internet, right? It's a little bit harder to do and convey your message. So just like from a communication standpoint, that's really high, more than just having the technical expertise.
Awesome. I appreciate those insights. Darshit, I want to come to you on this question. You're working in a different industry, although similar to Intuit in that you have software, but you're a smaller company where Intuit's a Fortune 500 company. Are there different needs that you think that you might be looking for, both in skills and in roles that you're hiring for?
Sure. So ZoomInfo, as I mentioned, it particularly deals with data and deriving intelligence out of the data that we have in place. So we are aggressively growing in the field of marketing, but also in the field of data science. And similar to what Chris said, any data science skills that you have, it could be R, Python, you're efficient in using certain BI tools like Tableau, Looker, Amplitude, and whatnot, those definitely make you stand out. In terms of product management, we are growing there, but the product management skills are more like on the soft skill side and rather than using the product or the tool side. So you would need to, you would have probably in your past, if you would have devised some product strategy or product vision or derived product roadmaps, those are the skills that we are looking for in terms of product management. In terms of marketing, content marketing is a dire need, specifically for our industry. We need content writers, illustrators who would help us prepare the deck for the go-to-market strategy. So those three fields are much more hot in our company at the moment.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And Roy, I want to come back to you on the same question.
Yeah, I would say definitely kind of to speak on what Darshit just said, digital marketing for sure is big. That's growing. That went from, I want to say 5 years ago, we didn't even have a digital marketing department. So now they're responsible for over $100 million a year in our annual collection. So digital marketing is huge right now. And that actually also includes the print, which we're kind of slowly, or actually very quickly getting away from print marketing and just moving all into digital. And then also I would say information technology for sure, just because of, especially, during COVID and needing people who have experience, setting people up to work from home, I think is huge. So information technology, digital marketing. And then the one position which I'm just always working on is any kind of analytical business data analyst. We're always looking for analysts too. So that's another big one.
Great. I want to put myself in our students' shoes. I've been applying for jobs, maybe 50 or so of them, and haven't gotten a single interview, and I'm trying to crack the code. I'm trying to figure it out. Can you tell me at your company, when you're hiring, what is it that's going to impress you? What is it that's going to attract you and make me as a candidate stand out the most? Is it my experience? Are they certain skills like problem solving, buzz terms like being a disruptor and being innovative? What is the thing that you're looking for the most? And what advice do you have for our students that have applied for a lot of jobs and haven't had a lot of luck yet? We're going to go back to our original order, and we're going to start with you, Chris.
Yeah, a couple things kind of jump out to me. So we're, and maybe this is the case for most of the other folks too, is we're really big on referrals internal to our company. So making those connections with someone that does the job that you want to do, and LinkedIn seems to be the tool du jour to be able to connect with folks. And same thing, like when you're introducing yourself in LinkedIn, it shouldn't be a blind thing. It should be, hey, want to know more about your job, and I'm graduating soon, would love to hear your perspective. And then making that connection so they can refer you to a job, get you to the top of the list, because a lot of our recs, especially at the more junior sort of mid-range, you just get so many. So there's I'm not a recruiter, but from a recruiting perspective, they're always looking for ways to prioritize, and referrals is a big way they do it. And then as far as what to put in your resume, I think it's just, where are you pushing yourself, number one, and where are you clearly showing success? So showing that progression that I think someone mentioned the growth mindset, showing that you're growing over time, whether it's a school environment, internships, all that stuff is showing progression and success over time is going to help you quite a bit.
Thanks, Chris. Coming back to you, Roy, on that question.
Yeah, well, definitely wanted to piggyback on what Chris said as far as just we're huge on referrals. Referrals are big, and certainly, LinkedIn is definitely, I would say, the biggest medium for us for that. I would also, I also recommend to people, and Chris and Julian, and I think a couple of people spoke on this, but to be more deliberate in your search. So like you guys said, I mean, don't just, send out your resume to somebody or a quick message, especially if it's not really right, if it's not really the right fit. I think it's important to be honest with yourself. And also, if you're still having trouble and not identifying necessarily maybe one or two people who work at the company to send your resume to, I mean, I'm a big believer in looking at is there something that you're not doing, or is there a format, or is there something with your resume that's turning people away? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's as simple as making a template adjustment, because a lot of times, that it happens, and it is a shame, but if recruiters, corporate recruiters, whatever, are looking at a lot of resumes, they're going to see a resume that maybe doesn't look like, professionally done, and they're going to move right by. They're not even going to bother reading it. So I think it's a matter of being more deliberate in your searches and finding individual people at a company you may be interested in to send your resume to. Certainly apply like you normally would, go through the process, but then reach out to somebody, and just kind of making sure that your resume and your cover letter is as clean as possible. That's what I would say.
Thanks. Also really great stuff there from you, Roy. Ali, so what makes our students stand out to you when you're looking at them, and what is your advice for those who have struggled and need to kind of find a way to hang in there?
Yeah, I would say I agree 100% with what Chris and Roy said. And, if we're looking at two different scenarios, if I am, scrolling through 50 different resumes for a job, right? These resumes, I'm just looking at someone's experience. So I'm just looking, do you have the experience to do the job? Or if it's entry level, right? That's everybody. What really stands out, scenario 2, is if I get some sort of email or message, or, you know, someone reaches out to me saying, hey, I really want to work at Commonwealth and would love to learn more about X, Y, or Z. Again, with Royce, something deliberate, something specific. I want to learn about this. I would love to learn about, your hiring process, or I'd love to learn about, you know, what different opportunities there are in wealth management, or I'd love to learn about your internship, whatever it may be that you are looking to get out, make sure you're specific. Then all of a sudden, I am now helping you rather than finding you a job, right? Another thing too is make sure when you're applying with the intention of wanting to work for that company rather than just applying for their job. And what I mean by that is do your research, right? I oftentimes will, you know, get to the point where I want to finally speak to this candidate on the phone, right? I want to have a conversation with them. I don't want to just see them on paper anymore. And it's such a pet peeve when I get on that phone call and they go, oh, wait, what does Commonwealth do? You could have spent 30 seconds on our website prior to our call. You could have been 30 seconds late to our call to do this, and you would have kind of understood. So do your research. Commonwealth, I don't know about you guys, but we have a lot of resources online. Our chief investment officer runs a blog. He posts every day. I always recommend students read that, right? It's coming from our executives. Really just try to get to know us and then come to me with your questions, right? If you say something to me like, hey, I looked on your website and saw you guys have a really cool benefit where you can use vacation properties. Can you tell me more about that? My answer would be, hell yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that, right? It's just a much more different experience. It's much more personable rather than you just submitting your resume and hoping someone contacts you, you know?
Really great points there, Allie. And I wasn't getting interviewed by any of you, but I did get bios from each of you. And in addition to that, preparing for this presentation today, I did research on every single one of you. And I kind of expect that's just the world we live in today. If you come in contact with somebody, they're going to check out your LinkedIn page. They're going to try to learn a little bit more about you. So for our students, one, like Allie said, do your own homework, be prepared. And 2, be prepared for them to do their homework. Get your LinkedIn page and your resume looking as great as it can, because you know the eyeballs are going to be on you. Julian, what do you have to add to the conversation?
Yeah, the gang has nailed it. Like, I don't have a whole lot to add, but I would say for the resume, right? It can be exhausting because you've been getting rejection, right, Greg, over and over and over. So towards the end of your search, you start to lose a little motivation and you stop tailoring your resume, or you never tailored it to begin with. You applied with the same resume to marketing, sales, product management, software engineering, same resume. So please take some time. You know, if you think about it, whether it's Intuit, Google, Commonwealth, any of these awesome companies, that's a huge investment to get a job, right? I'm super grateful to have a job, but if I needed especially desperately needed a job and my resume was going to be the first tool that someone was going to see, geez, you probably should put some time into that. And if you're not great at resumes, that's okay. There's plenty of resources at your career center. Someone's out there that's willing to take a look at it, but you should definitely have someone review it. One thing Darshit said earlier about our applicant tracking systems, which some of you may not have any knowledge about, but not until you become a recruiter, you realize, oh, wow, Darshit can see every job I've applied to. Wow, I've applied to 100 jobs at this company. I wonder if they're going to be like thinking I might not know what I want because I've applied to 100 jobs. So I think, you know, first impressions matter. Know that, unfortunately, you know, I know there's a lot of data protection, different changes in the laws, but your information is kept over a long time. So you want to be really deliberate. I think either Chris or Roy said earlier about your applications. So limit them. And then to Allie's point, when you send a message about a job, if that's the intent of your first conversation, or during your conversation flow with someone that might be able to help you, put the job like link, right? So again, that it might seem like a small step, but believe me, again, people in recruiting, even people that aren't in recruiting that are trying to help you with it internally, they don't want to become your personal recruiter. Trust me, they want to help you, but they want to do it quickly because time is at a premium these days. So those are my only add-ons. And then I'll just, I didn't mention it earlier, but product management, data science, data analytics, sales, and then our customer success organizations are the ones that are really growing it into it.
Thank you so much for that, Julian. And I have my own experience with the applying for every job type of thing. When I was younger, I really wanted to work for the Walt Disney Company. And I was working for Caesars Entertainment and Marketing, and I did just about everything for them. I wore every single hat. So as I was trying to apply for the Walt Disney Company, I literally applied for every single marketing type of role that they had and just wanted to get my foot in the door, feeling confident that I could do everything. And I did get an interview, but the recruiter called me out on that in the interview. It said, you have so many resumes in this application. We're not really sure if you're focused. And I was able, fortunately, to convince them, in the interview, and I got the job. But the recruiters are looking at that, and I did have to answer for applying to every single job. Darshit, I want to come to you, and you're an alum of our program at SDSU. You were a star both in the classroom, but also at our Career Management Center. And I think, part of it is if you're a student and you're applying and applying and applying and things aren't going your way, you have a team to help you at each of these schools. I mean, that's why we're putting on this presentation. There's a team at each of these schools that can help you evaluate what you're doing, help you change the approach to try to help be more successful. So it's going to be the same question for you, Darshit, about what stands out for you, what students can do if they're struggling, but also how can the students utilize their career management centers better to help them overcome that hump?
Awesome. Yeah, I'll start with the second question first. So I was in the same boat a few years ago, applying for hundreds of jobs, not getting calls. So obviously, first thought in my mind is like, okay, let me just go to Career Management Center, figure out what's going wrong. Let's talk about my approach that I'm taking. So I went to Tina many times, got my resume reviewed probably 6 times, 7 times in a course of a month or two, just to make sure my language is right. I am applying for the right roles and my resume is suited for those roles. So I'll give her my resume. I'll tell her like, okay, these are the jobs that I want to apply for. Do you think it makes sense? Or do you think something's missing? So that's where Career Management Center helped me a lot to tailor my resume and make sure it is fitting the right profiles I want to hit. Second, now stepping into the student shoes, what I found and how I improved upon my resumes and what I started doing or doing when talking to the recruiters. So first thing that I noticed what was missing from my resume is the actions. So let's say, just taking a quick example, let's say you are a data science candidate, you have done great data analysis, right? So you probably searched through or made sense out of millions of data records. You need to show what was the result of that analysis. Like, okay, you analyze 100 million records. You would put that on your resume. Did that help the company in any way? Did that help you in any way? What was the skill that you developed? How did it benefit the company? How did it benefit the project or the product? That is one of the most important things that when a resume comes to me for product management, I look for the actions and the results. Like you are taking meaningful actions rather than just taking action. So that's the first thing I would say. Add to your resume. Make sure the result and the impact of your actions is clearly articulated. Second thing is the company research. Ali hit the nail on the head with the company research. And I'm going to let you in on some of my secrets of what I do as a student or when I look for new jobs. Company about page, you need to be thorough with that page. Like every single detail about the company would be on the about page. Additionally, I go to Wikipedia to understand the history of the company. Bloomberg Business Week, they recently stopped doing that. Bloomberg Business Week, like you can Google that up and they have a website. they would give you excellent 2-3 line bios of every company in the world. So that's the first elevator pitch. Like when I talk to the recruiter, hey, do you know what my company does? I just use those 2-3 lines, and that is perfect for an introduction of the company. Recruiters would definitely like it. Go to the news and the press page. Sometimes they don't have news page, sometimes they would have press page. Look at the latest news. Understand, if you don't understand, that's fine, but at least have that news at the back of your mind, and then ask the recruiters. Like, for example, you saw news about a company acquiring another company. Ask the recruiter, what was the reason you acquired this company? What was the rationale behind? What are you trying to achieve by acquiring that company? So that shows your interest in working for the company rather than I want to do data science at your company. And the last thing about the LinkedIn, actually a couple of things. LinkedIn messaging etiquettes. What I did, again, I would use that 2-3 sentences introduction of the company, put it in my LinkedIn message to the recruiter. Say, I see you're growing, for example, I see you're growing in product management and you acquired this company, which would further your product offerings. I'm interested in product management. Here's the link to the job I applied. I would love to learn and chat more about it. So that gives a recruiter a perspective like, okay, this person has researched a little bit. Let's have a chat and see if it's of use or not. And the last thing, the applications which Julian mentioned about, do not keep blindly applying. I think some of the companies have started limiting your applications. For example, Facebook limits you to only 3 applications in 90 days. Do not blindly apply. That's a straight no, and it's a wrong impression on the recruiters, especially it tells the recruiters that you don't know what you want to do. So those are the things that as a student, I feel those were like a hindrance to my job application and getting a job. But then eventually I tried to overcome all of that by learning and understanding the mistakes that I was making.
Thanks, Darshit. I want to say wow to all of our panelists. I think the information that you have shared today is just incredible, and you've all been great. I do have one last question that I want to get to, and this is another question that I'm just going to open up to the panel for anybody that has something that they want to say on the topic. So we opened it up on a hot issue about the pandemic. We know that that's changed and affected the world we lived in. Roy had briefly mentioned the political environment and how that affects the world that we're living in. There's something else really important that's going on. The world is changing. We take steps forward, we take steps backwards, but it is the social justice movement. And I'm curious, how is that affecting your operations? How is that affecting how you hire? Is there any of our panelists that want to jump in and tackle that question?
Greg, I could mention something. So I would say that, in this last few years, I would say that most recently our company has really try to put a big initiative on a lot of different trainings and seminars that are in like diversity and inclusion, D&I, which seems to have become a huge kind of like corporate type of terminology. And I think that it hasn't necessarily, we as a company, we haven't necessarily implemented any policy decisions as it relates to hiring, but I think it's definitely given everybody a lot of education, much needed education on how we should look at our hiring practices. I think it's still, from my point of view, which is just one person, I think it's still early to tell if this has really made a big change yet. I don't really know if we know that yet, but it's something that I think about now on a daily basis. And, it's something that our company has really been trying to push. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks for that, Roy. Any of our other panelists have something they'd like to add?
Yeah, I can jump in here.
Okay, Allie.
Yeah, I think I agree with Roy, right? It's still going to be a while until we start seeing the impact. In terms of some things, Commonwealth is really paying attention to, one of the main things that we have been trying to educate our hiring teams and really all of Commonwealth on is really looking at a candidate in terms of how they can make us better, right? What can they bring to the table that has actually nothing to do with your technical skill or your ability to do the job? What can you bring to the table to make us a kinder and happier and more fun company, right? Instead of you fitting in with us in our pre-existing culture, we want you to come to us and we want you to enhance it, right? Culture is the sum of its parts. And we want you to come and be that one little addition that makes us, you know, even more unique and quirky and valued, right? That's why we've gotten our Best Place to Work awards, and that's why we'll continue to get them, is because we're hiring unique people. So my piece of advice is to show your personality, show your interests, right? Be a real human being in the interview. Sure, make sure you want to get your professionalism and your communication skills and your technical abilities across, absolutely. But I want to know who you are too.
Thank you so much for that, Allie. And I think I really like what you said about what do you bring to the table? Because I think when it relates to business and how diversity and inclusion and how the social justice movement in general are really affecting things, it really comes down to that, is the value of what those things actually mean. I have a little bit of experience as a hiring manager at Caesars Entertainment, but also in my current role, I put together teams every semester for MBA consulting programs. So we work with companies like Microsoft, Qualcomm, General Atomics, and I've got to put together teams that are going to work on projects for them, and it's a puzzle. And I'm looking at everybody, and I'm looking exactly at what you said. What are they going to bring to the table in every single way, in every single aspect of it? In the recruiting world, or in my advising world, I call it personal branding. Finding a way to let recruiters know what value you have that's intrinsic, not just on paper to what you've done, but how do you fit into a company? What is that piece of the puzzle that you're going to fit? But I don't want to monopolize the time on that. Is there any other panelists that has something to add on that subject before we go to breakout rooms? Chris, and then, Julian, I'll let you go first because Chris has been going first all day. And then Chris will come
No, no, that's cool. Thanks, Chris. I was just going to say Intuit, I mean, it's a journey, right? Across all corporations right now, considering the social movement. Our CEO took a step back and, I think the messaging has to come from the top and it has to come from the bottom up. But in really demonstrated his support and his, what's the word I'm looking for? Vulnerability and ignorance to a certain extent around some topics of diversity. Just so you know, our CEO, his name is Sasan Goodarzi. He's actually from Tehran. But when it comes to like the Black employee experience, for example, like he just wasn't as aware. And so the organization has created what they call the REAL team. It's the Racial Equity and Advancement and Leadership team. And it's kind of, just think of a new division. We have a new Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer to really start thinking more intimately around underrepresented minority recruiting, training and development, inclusive policies and practices, which really this was going to shift the organization too, right? It has to be something that's in print. But the last thing that we've done as an organization is we've instituted or reimagined our corporate values. It's only been done 3 times in Intuit's history, and we were born in 1984. But one of the new values is called Stronger Together. And so a lot of the questions that we're asking, even for a software engineering interview, right, we are asking more questions now to candidates about diversity and their thoughts on diversity, to have that conversation and let them know that we really do value that as an organization. And then the only last thing is from an interview panel perspective, right? Many of us have been in an interview, right? And sometimes, the person on the other side of the table doesn't look like you, maybe doesn't have the same cultural background, but we're trying to be really mindful in how we, of the candidate journey from the first point of contact through to the interview process, so that, for example, if I'm a Black male, like there potentially might be an African-American male on the interview panel, a female represented on the panel, et cetera. And so those are just a few of the things that we're doing, but we do know it's going to take some time to really get traction. So
I really like a few of the things you added there, Julian. Like one, that this is a leadership issue. It comes from the very top down, and it's about understanding and making the effort to understand, not just assuming that those things are going to happen. And then I like how you kind of brought us full circle. I had each of you open up with the short elevator pitch about your companies, and we're talking about what students should be looking for. This is absolutely one of those things that our students should be looking at. And I like how you brought it to that candidate perspective. Chris, what did you want to add on the topic?
Yeah, I think, very similar to what Julian was talking about is probably going on in a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, where they're really looking at their practices. I know we hired a independent consulting company. It sounds funny, another consulting company helping consultants, but we actually had an independent company come in, and we just opened the books and let them look at everything and said, where are we doing good? Where are we doing bad? And they've been releasing that information internally, and we're looking to find the problems where we need to improve. So this big push over the last year or two to really be more authentic and more transparent, and where are the opportunities to just drop sort of the mask, not the COVID mask, but the feel like I can be myself. And what are those venues and those opportunities where I have a safe space where I can talk about these types of issues. So we've got like a big corporate wide, it's called Unstoppable event that we do annually. It's actually coming up next week, where there's a lot of these topics that are being introduced, and they're just letting employees talk about it, and the CEOs on the call and everything. So I think you'll see a lot of that with these companies. And that brings it back to when you're applying and you're thinking about your resume and the interview, how can you be authentic and transparent yourself? Because I think it's very much appreciated nowadays on the other side of the fence as well. And sometimes that's as easy as from a resume perspective, like what are those community type things that you're doing, adding those to your resume, how are you sort of well balanced and really getting involved in the community. And then when you're in the interview room, being yourself, being your professional self in that interview room. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that very much. Any other last thoughts on that? All right, well, let's go ahead and get to our breakout rooms, because I'm sure that our students are dying to speak with each of you on a more personal basis. I am going to ask each of our panelists, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat that if you're open to our students reaching out, you don't have to put your contact information in there right now, but just letting them know if you're open to them, if they don't get their question in during the breakout room, can they reach out to you directly or have one of us connect them with you directly for the follow-up questions?
Sorry, now or in the breakout rooms?
You can do that in the chats now, so that everybody, because as they go into breakout rooms, they may not have they may want to talk with you, Chris, but may not have a chance to get into your breakout room. And then for the students, you're going to be seeing some options for breakout rooms. So go ahead and choose the breakout room that you want to start. If you have time to switch, I'm going to be in this main room transitioning and helping you with that transition. So feel free to switch, but otherwise, I would certainly recommend starting with whichever company or person that you really want to try to have an opportunity to follow up with.
To add to that as well, so yeah, as Gregory mentioned, you will all have a prompt that you will be able to select which employer or recruiter you'd like to speak to. If you don't get that prompt, it means you don't have the latest version of Zoom. So I recommend to maybe do an update over the weekend, so then you can have that option available to you for later points in time. But like Greg mentioned, he will be sitting here in the main room. So if that prompt doesn't show up for you, he can help, assign you to whatever room you're looking for. If you choose to leave your first selected room, you'll leave to come to the main room. And we have a few folks from the committee here that can help navigate you to whatever room you'd like to go to next. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up rooms. The rooms will automatically close after 23 minutes, and then y'all will come back here. We'll do like 1 minute, just wrapping up, basically saying goodbye, have a good weekend, and we'll move on with our Fridays. All right. Thank you, everyone, and sending you off now.